Hello. Right, I have a script. This is my first time doing this. Please be gentle. I'll be reading from it. So hi everybody, welcome to the Pervasive Media Studio Lunchtime Talk. These talks are live every Friday at 1 p.m, both here in the building and live online across Twitter, Facebook and YouTube. So whether you're in Bristol or far away or in a car waiting to get into Glastonbury, you can join the conversation. My name's Tom Aber. I'm the director of the Digital Cultures Research Centre at UWE. I am a white man in his early 50s with greying hair and a short beard, wearing a blue shirt and dark blue jeans. These lunchtime talks are part of our Open Studio Friday offer. So every Friday, for those of you who don't know the studio, we throw open the doors and offer you the chance to spend time in the space by hot desking alongside our residents and staff for the entire day from 10 till 5 p.m. They're a really great way to get to know the studio, to figure out whether you want to be part of it, or just to hang out and meet like-minded people. These talks, of which this is one of the series, cover everything from innovative research in fields of creativity and technology to projects in progress, which are in need of feedback, questions, and most importantly, curious minds. And a very warm welcome to those of you who are new to the studio. Can I raise your hands so we know who you are? Brilliant. For this may be the first time you're engaging with us. Those of you who've heard this bit before, why don't take a moment to share this link to this talk to your social media, and let's get even more people joining us live. So, a little bit of a preamble. What is the Pervasive Media Studio? We're a diverse and collaborative community exploring creativity and technology, with everything from comedy to coding to product development to performance art. We're a home for embryonic ideas, research and development and the building of new companies. And we're a meeting place of both creative and commercial industries. We offer studio space, offering desk space, meeting rooms, events, and opportunities to meet our residents as part of our spirit of generosity and mutual exchange. We are, importantly, a place for people to take risks in their practice and make time for collaboration. So a little bit of housekeeping before I hand over. Feel free during the talk to move around, make a cup of tea. There's a kitchen behind you. Grab a glass of water. We've got a quiet space just to the left of this space for anyone who needs to take a break at any point. Fire exits are at either end of the studio, and one of the studio team will direct you to them should we need to use them. Accessible toilets and baby change can be found in the corridor next to the kitchen. A captioned version of this talk will also be available on the same link that you've got after the talk is finished. And for those of you who are present online and in person, there's a Q&A at the end of the talk. For those of you watching online, pop your questions in the YouTube chat or tweet us at PM Studio UK. And if you're in the building, just raise your hands. And I'll ask Jade to kind of moderate and wander around with a microphone, and we'll direct that bit of the talk at the end. You can get news on all our future talks by heading to watershed.co.uk/studio, PM Studio UK on Twitter, and Pervasive Media Studio on Instagram. Okay, that was the speech bit over. I'm really excited to introduce today's talk. Composer, creative producer, and artist Jen Bell will be discussing her research project, Songography, which looks at alternative ways of mapping an area based on how we locate ourselves and our communities. I'm going to sit down and hand it over to Jen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for coming to listen to this talk and online. Thanks for joining me. I would like to share with you some research and development that I've been doing into mapping. It's a very personal project for me because I'm mapping where I grew up. And actually, I started with an inspiration point, which was a text by someone called Bruce Chatwin, who's an anthropologist who did some studies on Aboriginal songlines. For those who aren't aware of songlines, they were basically a way for Aboriginal people to communicate where they were. They literally sang the world into existence. So instead of having written maps, they would sing their routes through places. And as a songwriter and someone who uses song as a way of, I would say I use song as portraiture. So often my practice is to interview people. I'll sit down and have a conversation with someone. And based on our conversation, I'll use what they say in a song, either verbatim or as a kind of impression. And then often what I'll do is I'll collect songs on the same theme. So I might get groups of people who have experienced the same thing. I tend to work along lines of shared experience rather than identity groups. So I might get people who have all experienced grief, or people who all work in an office or work in a particular place, or in this case, who live in the same place. And I have conversations and then put all of these conversations into a kind of musical form and then present them in some way. Usually, I will create either live work, so I'll get groups of singers to sing my songs, and that might be live performance, or I might work on radio, or I have actually done song tours as well before, where I'm situating the work in an unusual place. Sometimes I'm in theatres, but usually it's kind of in unusual situations. And this project, I suppose, born out of lockdown weirdness, I decided that I would like to, well, I guess because actually I couldn't go back to where I'm from, which is a place in West Cornwall. I couldn't go back there. I felt more inclined towards it, and I was thinking about ways I could connect with it, and thought about ways of maybe expressing my connection to it in an unusual way. And that's where the idea of creating an interactive digital map came from. So it's all of this kind of like this pot of thinking about place and people, and whether people make a place or the place makes the people. And I think actually, when you delve into that, it's very unclear, because it's both, really. And I mean, even to the point of, you think about your biology, or your microbiome, your immune system, it's all really affected by environment. You know, constantly our bodies are in conversation with where we're from, and we often share kind of immune profiles with people we're really close to, or if you're in a relationship with someone, you will start to share the kind of same features in your microbiome as the people who are intimate with you. So I think about community, and I think about place, and I think about how these are inextricably linked. And then I also think about song. And I'll tell you more about that in a sec. But for now, I'd just like to invite you to have a think about your life in terms of the geography of your life, where you've been, where you've journeyed, who you've met. And imagine your whole life as a map, perhaps. And then on this map, you might be inclined to think about meaningful places. You might be wanting to put people on those on that map. Where are those people? Where are they? Where are those special things that have happened to you that are meaningful? And how would your map then come? What would it look like? Would it be geographically accurate? Probably not, because the places, we've got a party outside, because the places that, the places that are special to us and that occupy, say, a large space in your mind might be across the ocean, you know? I always think that when I get to the point of death, I will probably be, wherever I am in the world, I can imagine that I will probably be on Marazion Beach. And that because it occupies such a huge amount of my thought world. And so this is the kind of map that I'm interested in making. It's not necessarily geographically accurate, but certainly I've been inviting people from this place that I'm from to be thinking about their relationship to place and how they move about the place and how they move about within their communities. And so the practice was to go down to Mounts Bay in West Penwith. I don't know if any of you are familiar, but it's like basically the toe tip of the UK, really right at the bottom. And Mounts Bay is almost like a natural harbour. It's quite an extraordinary place. If you're kind of in the middle of the bay, you can see all the towns around the bay. You get a real sense of, it's almost like a map of itself. You can see everything. And it's got this very natural kind of open arms kind of structure. So when you're there, it does feel like a place to be held, where you could be held, and it is a place where lots of people go to visit, and it has historically been a place of pilgrimage, and it's historically been a place where people have gone to recover. And what I didn't realise at the start of this project was how important mapping is in recovery from things, particularly psychological issues. So, for example, if you have trauma, often people talk about trauma in terms of having lost your coordinates and all the familiar things not being in the same place. I mean, maybe a person has gone, and that person then means that you have to reorientate yourself in the world. And what I didn't realise at the start of this project, and having now done this research, is that if you make a map of a place, it can actually really put you back together. You know, you can help to reorientate yourself within your own life story, within the arms of a bay, or wherever it is that is your special place that you have, you know, a particular connection to. So I firstly would recommend, if anyone gets a chance, go and map somewhere. Or in fact, don't even go anywhere. Just start mapping and think about these places, think about these people, and log them, because it's a powerful process. I was sitting on Marazion Beach at one point, watching people use the map, and realising that through this process of talking to members of the community, and through finding out their experiences and their relationships to the place and their relationships with other people in the community, that was like it was a way in which I felt like I reconnected properly with where I was from. So the conversations started with people that I knew first and foremost, and then I kind of started exploring and meeting people who I didn't know who were from the area, and asking them basically the same sets of questions, which are, where would you put on the map? Where have there been meaningful experiences for you? Who are special people that you would like to put on the map? And there's an anecdote that I'll share with you. There's a little boy from St Just, who's just over the hill from Mounts Bay. St Just, a small little mining village, and his parents run the Chinese takeaway there. He'd never been to China, but he got taken up by one of the organisations I worked with, Shifting Horizons. They work with vulnerable children, right? He got taken up to the highest point on the peninsula, right? And you can see all around the coast and just into the Atlantic and the Channel. And he started jumping up and down and going, I can see China, I can see China. And for him, that's where China is, you know, and that's fine. And I kind of feel like that's his map, and that would be acceptable. You know, there are all sorts of different maps that don't necessarily have to be geographically accurate, and all maps are interpretations anyway, you know. So I started talking to these people and asking about their special places, what they would put on the map. I was interested in talking to people from across the generations. So I talked to real tinies, and then people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and took a kind of cross-section. But because this is a kind of pilot project, I got this kind of basically a handful of people to talk to. And it was absolutely fascinating, some of the things that they were saying. And I basically decided that what I wanted to do was take these stories and at some point create a song map. So turn these stories into a set of songs, but also an audio story map. And that this map could be experienced more along the lines of the song lines. So you could walk, so it would be an audio walk, and you'd be listening to the stories and songs. But also that there's an interactive digital version online. So you can actually access the same stories, the same kind of vignettes, but it's not held in the way that the audio walk is So the audio walk is more of a kind of narrative piece. It's constructed in a way that it's got a start and a middle and an end, and you go on a journey, you go on this route. But the interactive map is much more led by you, and you're then able to go, oh, I want to see this person or hear that story. And actually, before I go on, I think I probably should just show you a little bit of it so you can visualize what I'm talking about. So it's basically, I've got these two pilot versions of the same thing. So one is an audio walk, and one is this digital interactive map, which I'll show you. Here we go. So this was made in collaboration with some creative technologists in the area that I'm from, near Penzance, Newlyn, called Plan 8 VR. They're brilliant. They're watching today, so I'm going to try and represent them properly. Someone actually asked me recently how we made the map, and I said we took photos of. Well, in fact, I'll tell you now. We went into a primary school and got the map of the bay projected onto huge bits of brown paper, and the children traced round the edges of this map and put the names of the places on it. And then they started drawing some of the things that they were interested in and some of their special people and places on this same map. And then Woody and Luke, the people I've been working with, photographed this map. And then someone asked me, how did you make it interactive? And I said, they put it through the computer. That was basically, but I've subsequently learned that there's something called the Geographic Information System, right? Many of you know this. So there's a way in which they do it, which is very clever. I don't know how it works, but we've come up with this pilot, and I'll show you the basic intro and how it functions. So it's in very early stages, so you'll see in a sec. Well, I'll open up for you. Can we have some sound, Martin?
Hello, my name is Jenny, and this is me when I was 2 in my favourite rock pool, right here by Chapel Rock. All of the other people you see around you live in Mount Spey. They are our cartographers, and they have put their stories on this map. I'd like to invite you to explore and discover surprises by navigating your way around the bay. You never know who you might bump into, or what you might hear.
Now, you can see that the map is made by the children. So they had a great hand and investment in how this was going to turn out. I'm not quite sure whether if we developed this version, it will end up looking like this, but you get the impression that basically we can create something that the people who we've been talking to have a connection with. They have had a hand in creating it, and I think that's quite, it's been quite powerful to do that with the children. Some of whom are on here, many of whom couldn't be on here, partly because when I was asking them the question of, I was saying how. Who would you put on the map? And I said to them, actually, you can put people who are here, or you can put people who are not here. They don't necessarily have to be alive. It's up to you. It's about your life. Who would you put on your map? and we had this class of children, and basically loads of them, then it turned into a grief workshop where loads of them were talking about their dead pets. And it was absolutely amazing. I mean, it was great. It was really great for them because they were able to talk about that. But we basically got loads of stories about dead dogs, which we couldn't include, and we couldn't include all of them. But we have got one story about a precious dog, which I might play to you actually, or I could play you. I'll play you this little boy here. So I click on the.
So I live on the mount, and also sometimes I get to. I'm late sometimes for school because it's sometimes like black flag or the tide's too wild. Sometimes I get to skip days of school because of the tide. The best thing about living there is jumping off the end of the quay and hopefully not knocking yourself out. I've already put this stuff on the map. I've put on my dog Agnes, and my cat Tinker, and my mum and dad, and last but not least, a waffle. The only reason why I put it on is because I like waffles. There was a day one.
There, so we've got these various different stories, and as you can see, I'll go back, we've got people from different generations here. From all kind of walks of life, and there are you might be able to see floating around, there's one in the background. There are also kind of animated features, so everything on the map has a story attached to it, and there are some songs in here as well. But given this being a very small bit of R&D, I've only created one song for this particular piece and then some soundscapes, but all of the singing and soundscapes were made with people from the area. So for example, there's a song that I wrote called I Am a Boy, and it's based on a kind of composite of stories, one story from my dad, some of my stories from being there, someone from Newlyn called David Barron, and I put all of these stories into one song, which I'll just play you a little bit, and then got a local singer from Mousel Male Voice Choir to sing. I can get there. It's hiding under here.
I am a boy, catching blennies in buckets in my rock pool world, in my rock pool. Down by Granny's cottage, down by Granny's cottage.
I'm going to stop that there. So the song goes through this boy's life and life living in Mounts Bay. And I'll just play you one of the associated stories.
Well, I used to jump on my Uncle Frankie's boat, and he used to say, right, hold on to the tiller, boy, see the St. Michael's Mount, see the harbour wall, point the bow of the boat to that and keep it steady. No, over a bit, left a bit, no, back right, right a bit, that's it, just keep it on that line. And he used to go around and collect the money, and back then health and safety wasn't really an issue as it is now, because I was only 8 or 9 and I had this boat full of grown-ups. I was their lives were in my hands for a quarter of an hour. Oh, it was lovely. And when I used to get fed up with that, I used to go over to Chapel Rock, and I used to take a little pin with me and a little bit of cotton, and kick off some limpets from the side of Chapel Rock, and fish in the rock pool there, my favourite rock pool. And the poor little sods, they were terrorised by me, the little fish, these blennies, these mullies. And I used to catch them and put them in a little pool a little bit higher up, and later on in the day, I used to scoop them all up in my hands and put them back into the original rock pool, and it was absolute heaven.
So hopefully when you take a journey through the map, then the songs will start to make more sense and be kind of illustrated more by, you know, the stories themselves. And I was very intent on capturing some of the local vernacular. There were things that I didn't even know from the way that I speak that are just common to that area. I had a session with an amazing sociolinguist called Lucy Ellis from Exeter University, and she was talking about the different kind of idiomatic speech that you can get from really the top of a cove to the bottom of the cove, or between communities of interest or communities of industry. And some of the things that I noted, you know, for example, that was my dad speaking. He's talking about catching blennies in buckets, but the word blennies are these little fish, and they actually have loads of different names. So mullies, or there was another one. So the singer of the song you just heard, he said, "Oh, I used to fish for." He had another name for it. It was something like mullies, but it was bullcods. That was it, bullcods. So they have all of these different names for the same thing, but it's all very, you know, it's all very, very personal. And I'm interested in how there's such a clear link for me between speech and song and meaning and place through, I think, essentially rhythm and the rhythms that we take on when we're walking or being in a place. So if you think about, you know, often our first connection to language is through song, and then when we kind of get deep into understanding and meaning through song, and yet song is all kind of based on rhythm, as speech is based on rhythm, as walking is based on rhythm, and the way that we understand and analyse poetry and language often is based on rhythm. The way that we talk about prosody and the way in which we analyse lines of a poem, we talk about the metrical feet, the beats, the feet in a line are like the footsteps of our rhythmical expression. I just think they're all somehow interlinked, and I'm interested in that in particular. And in this kind of pilot version, we're touching on it just a little bit. We've got the interactive map, and then we've also got the audio piece, which I haven't really gone into in much detail, but that's something that I'm hoping that people could experience at home, but mainly they're going to be actually on Marazion Beach in the place and walking around the map, the actual real map of the place, and listening. And hopefully I'd like to just in a very light touch way augment the experience of walkers by perhaps making some AR binoculars, so that if they need to, for example, see this little, oh look, there's a boat again. If they need to see this cottage here, this is my great-grandmother's cottage that was scat down. I didn't realise scat is a Cornish word. I had no idea. I've always said that. I thought everyone said it. They'd knocked this cottage down to make space for a car park, paved paradise, of course. And my dad was talking about how this cottage was a place of archaeological significance. And I was thinking, does he mean architectural significance? But I actually realised that no, he did mean archaeological, because that building, that site of that building would have been a kind of key place for anyone across the ages making the journey between the land and St Michael's Mount, which is that island that you can see. So it would have been...
Well, I used to jump on my Uncle Frank.
There he goes. So it would have been actually a very significant place historically as well. So it doesn't exist there anymore. And I'm thinking on this walk, there may be ways in which we could... I'm very allergic to people holding up, walking along and holding screens and doing this, which is fine. But I think it's kind of more exciting perhaps to have some sort of technology that you can use at your own discretion when you want to, as you do when you go for a regular walk and you have binoculars. You don't have to have binoculars to enjoy your walk. They're there to augment your walk and give you a sense of what is there in the distance if you wanted that. And I'm hoping that in the walk what we could do is use the binoculars to give you a sense of what isn't there if you wanted that, or an element of the people of the story, of the people and their stories who aren't physically there with you, that could be illustrated with a little bit of light touch animation or film with these binoculars. So anyway, that's kind of the stage that we're at. Yeah, I would really welcome any thoughts that anyone had about this or any questions that you might have, because anything at this point is to play for with the development of this work, and hopefully we will get support to continue with it into the next phase. At the moment we're supported by Arts Council England, Feast, which is an organisation in Cornwall, and I've had support from the studio here and a small theatre in Cornwall as well. So we've got some partners, some amazing organisations that we've worked with, and obviously the local school, Marizine School, and local choir, Mount Bay Singers, various different people, Shifting Horizons, the organisation that takes children out into nature. So we've had these amazing people to work with, and I'm hoping that there's enough, we can kind of persuade people with money to give us some more to explore this process, because as I say, I think there's something in this, something very deeply healing and cohesive in a relational way, but also in a personal way. So that's the work. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, I'll jump in for a second and say thank you, Jen, for the talk. We're going to move to the Q&A section. We've got about half an hour, so we'll use the whole lot. We won't use the whole lot. If you've in the room, obviously raise your hand, and Jay's got a microphone online. We've got questions, I presume, going in the YouTube chat, so we'll kind of filter back and forth. Can I start with something, though?
Yeah.
So you spoke at the very beginning about Aboriginal culture and a sense of mapping through story, and I wonder, kind of, almost to close the whole loop round, how do you feel about that in relation to the work that you've made? Is there a very clear connection now, or has that kind of culturally shifted? Thinking about the move from Australia, or a concept that originates in Australia all the way through to something that's now situated in Cornwall?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very cool question, because actually it is different. What I'm doing is different. I do love the idea of creating a piece, because I'm also aware of issues of appropriation, and I'm not trying to ape something that is actually a sacred cultural practice. But song is common to all of us, place is common to all of us, relationship with place is common to all of us, walking and stories are common to all of us. And so this is a different process, but I do also love the idea that using technology, where you've got kind of geolocated audio to help you move throughout a space, potentially we are getting more into that kind of that realm where you're being compelled by what you're hearing and potentially invited through song or through sound to have a different relationship with the place that you're in. I like that idea. And we may well do it. I like this idea of, so I work a lot with choirs generally, and in the audio piece so far, we've got this sense we're trying to bring for people, which is that if you stand close to someone in that choir, you can hear their individual voice, whereas if you stand back, you hear a chorus of voices, and they're all singing the same anthem, essentially. And I think we could probably do something quite clever with technology where depending on where you stand, you can hear one person, or if you stand back, you can hear the choir, that kind of thing. So, yeah, along those lines, but the song lines were an inspiration point rather than a direct something that I'm trying to mimic. Or,
sure.
Yeah. you know.
Thank you. Anybody in the room, first of all?
I've got a question.
Go on, Jade.
So I was just wondering kind of what people's reactions were to this that had contributed to it when they saw the final thing. And yeah, I guess in a lot of coastal towns, a lot of younger people tend to move on. And I just wondered if things like this, if you feel like things like this will kind of give younger people an appreciation for the place that they've grown up in.
That's a really great question too. I think that, okay, when you're dealing with stories that are personal, you're going to have a very, very particular sort of personal feedback. And that feedback is all to do with recognition and the sense of being celebrated and seen and witnessed. And that's always been like just a big part of the work that I do anyway, regardless of what it's about. It's, you know, it's about seeing people really. That's why it's like portraiture. And I wondered whether, you know, if you're doing a portrait of a place, you could call it a landscape or you could call it a portrait, and because it's actually got loads of people in it, and it's really affected. That place is really affected by the people. That there are huge scars in the landscape that have been caused by people, but that are also celebrated by people. So all of the feedback, or a lot of the feedback, has been about recognition and going, yeah, and I remember that, and it's important that we carry this stuff in our hearts, and so that kind of thing. From strangers, I haven't had we haven't reached out to that many people who have no relationship to the place. What feedback from those people? I mean, often that it's just really personal, you know, that it feels personal even though it's not personal to them. I think people, everyone's got a sense of relating to some of these stories, and especially if you're someone, so a lot of the stories I've gathered are from people, they live in the place, but they're not necessarily from the place. So a lot of people who have come and settled, or who have had to come and settle because they can't live where they live anymore. And I feel a little bit, I understand that because I live here in Bristol, but my heart will always be in two places. I'm always going to be homesick. I can't live there because I will be homesick for here. I can't live here and not be homesick for there. So I'm always going to be in two. And this is definitely the case, or certainly I would imagine is the case with a lot of people who are displaced or have had to seek asylum. So there's this kind of sense in which you have to kind of spiritually map yourself wherever you are. And I think, and even if you've been in the same, so there's Carol Eddy on this map. She's an amazing person, Carol and Dave Eddy. So in a sense, she's kind of got that experience because she lives in Marazion now, but she grew up in Newlyn, which is about 4 miles away. But she's got, because she was motorised transport, she's still got really clearly in her memory, she talks about this a lot, how it was a day out to go to Marazion. You know, the way in which she moved across the land was kind of instrumental in how she almost, she identifies. I mean, she's a Marazion person now, but she may well say, you know, I'm a Newlyn girl. She, you know, it's still embedded in there. So, yeah, so I think even if you're from one place, I think you can identify this with the stories of belonging, being removed from, but also, as I alluded to at the beginning, how even if you're in the same place, a traumatic experience can do that same thing. So you're in one place, but still suddenly everything looks different. So that's the kind of where we're at with the feedback is recognition, I would say, people have. Yeah. Thanks, Jade.
A question behind, then we'll go to one online and try and double back.
Sure.
Just related to speak as early as you can to it.
Just related to what you said, is it related to where you pin the people on the map? Is it because their stories was based on that location?
Yeah. Yes.
Because I was thinking what you were explaining just now, it's so amazing because place is more about the network of relations rather than and the location as well. But I was thinking maybe the sound and I don't know if the map these relations, these stories could light up on the map rather than seeing the face on that location.
Yeah.
Because that could be more giving the understanding of all these relations together rather than seeing that location specifically.
That's fascinating. So you could have the person could be on the map, but not necessarily in the place that they're talking to. We could make that visually. Yeah.
Right, because that gives maybe more relational understanding rather than a locational understanding.
That's really, that's a really good idea. That's fantastic. I think in some cases it felt nice to kind of, like, I suppose like a point of pilgrimage. There are these places that are significant and then people go back to them. So I think maybe I'll just illustrate with, very quickly with, so this happens to be one of my favourite stories on the map. Where is she? There, look, there's Carenza, right?
He had tight Wrangler jeans on, again wears clothes, blue Adidas trainers and like a vest top, and he was quite muscly, like very broad, and I was like, ooh, at 15 you're kind of like, you're a bit of alright. And he said, oh, just fancy a dance? Yes, please.
So that's Carenza. She's talking about Treve there. This is at the Station House pub, and it was love at first sight. And 30 years later, they're still married. So I felt like, even though she's not actually from that place, but she's from at the top of the hill. It was like that's where her main her life formative story is. That completely, has given the plot point for her whole existence. Amazing, really. But yeah, they're just fabulous, aren't they? Did you want to do an online one?
Online?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we've got one online. Should we do online first?
Do online and then we'll bounce back to the room.
Come back to you. So Kelly Smith online says, I love the idea about the mental mapping you spoke of. Are there ambitions to include stories of people that have memories of the Mount but are currently geographically dislocated from the place? Then goes on to say, would be lovely to get a sense of how far the Mount has travelled in people's minds.
Oh, that's an amazing idea. What a great idea. Yeah, people don't have to be there at all. I think that's a great idea. There was... I was a little bit reticent to ask people for oral histories. I mean, I love oral histories projects. They're fantastic. And I do have relationships with like Newlyn Archives, and I hope to share this work in museum settings. It would be great because, of course, it's like it's a chronicle. It's a chronicle. But I was trying to get the people, to talk about what their life is like now rather than memories, although of course life now is full of memories. So especially when you're talking about place, you naturally get inspired to talk about things that have happened and events and brilliant. The Mount is a really significant place historically. As I said, it's a place of pilgrimage, and I love this idea that. So in Cornwall, there's a sense, a lot of us feel that there's an invasion happening because it's really tourism is become the dominant industry. There used to be fishing and mining and farming, and those industries have declined. They're going a little bit, and Newlyn's brilliant. It's still got a very, very active fishing port, but the cultural landscape has completely changed, and particularly in the last 30 years, and particularly in the last maybe 5 or 10 years with regards to housing and community and people actually being resident in the places, because developers have just seen this as an investment opportunity, as a place to set up Airbnbs and actually be a kind of place for second homes for people. I mean, again, Carol Eddy and Dave, they were saying, Marazion, well, it's just becoming a millionaire's row. We can't afford to live there. My parents can't afford. We can't go back. So there's this sense of encroachment, and in regular cases, immigration is a fantastic thing because you've got a cultural influx and sharing and ideas, and and culture and society and communities and brilliant, and sometimes they rub up against one another, but still you've got people. But when you've got something like tourism, which is very much in and out, it's not, we don't have those same developmental relationships or investments. Nevertheless, right, this is a place that has been used historically for tourism forever, and tourists still have meaningful experiences there, I'm sure. I mean, many of you would have probably been down here and gone, this is the most magical place in the world. It's absolutely amazing. And that doesn't make it any less yours. It's your it's yours. It's meaningful to you. That's fine. And I'm just interested in the difference between like tourism and pilgrimage, because if you go there as a pilgrim, you belong. You're meant to be there. You've gone there for the place. And it's a semantic difference, really. But the question was about relationships to the mount over time. I mean, I just think it belongs. It's about belonging, isn't it? It belongs to anyone. Anyone who has a meaningful experience anywhere, you have a sense of belonging. You know, it might not be on a deed anywhere, but it is still in your deeds that you have created that meaning for yourself on your map, on your personal map. So yeah, that was Ace's question. Anyone else?
I don't think this is working. Oh, I couldn't hear.
Oh, it's working for the online people.
Oh, it's for the online people. Hello. Thank you, Jen, for that. Like full of inspiration, actually, and loads of thoughts coming up. Around this. Well, really. About coming back into relationship with landscape and what that means for the multiple crises that we're facing. And I feel like this work is actually really important as a way of, people have a difficulty in imagining a more just and ecological future, reimagining our relationship to place and land and nature, and therefore living in a more regenerative, balanced, interconnected way with the living systems of the planet, you know.
Yeah.
And that a lot of people's lives are kind of defined by sort of artifice, by things which aren't to do with the living systems of the planet, which are the only systems that are really in charge, and defined by the non-natural. So in terms of finding pathways to reconnect people to landscape and to place, and to the imagination, to be able to imagine what is possible, and particularly the role of story and story through song and the way that song connects into memory, because there is a sort of amnesia about us and our landscapes, and there's this kind of sense of, like, what does it mean to belong to a landscape, and how do we rediscover that again as part of our journey towards living on this planet in a way that can sustain us?
Yeah, totally.
So I suppose, and then talking about the kind of the new colonisation, the neoliberal colonisation of, second homes and all of that, is, it's more of the enclosures, it's more of the same of industries that disconnect people from place, move along. There's an industry here that needs to take over. So I do quite a lot of work with looking at relocalizing food systems, and I feel I'd love to talk to you more about how we might use this, particularly across the west of England, and that the west of England sort of bioregion is something that I'm working on at the moment with another mapper, and how we can reimagine it as in terms of our food system, future food system.
Yeah.
So yeah, any thoughts on that? I just sort of blurted with no particular question, but I just
No, it's I get what you're saying. I completely agree. This is about relationships. Do you know what? This is amazing. I've just realised I'm just about to say exactly what one of the brilliant contributors said. She says, I don't think actually I got that little bit of vignette on the map, but she says it's all about relationships. What we do is all about relationships. Relationships with place, with yourself, with the people around you. You know, it's all about that. And developing those relationships is really important, especially when we're at a time where we are at risk of becoming incredibly kind of, you know, we're in an age of individualism where we have to sort out our problems ourselves. Self-help industry is huge. We're expected to figure everything out. We've got our phones and our profiles and our identity, and we're so removed. And in fact, so I think any processes that encourage relationship, it doesn't necessarily need to be with people, it would just be with place. It could be with we've got the arms of the bay, we've got the harbours in the bay, which are like smaller arms. We've got then the mummy and the child, or the dad and the child who had got their arms around the rock pool. We've got these scales of relationship, and it doesn't matter how close you focus in or how far you draw back. I think it's really important to develop those, and that's why what did I say? This is spiritual cartography or something like this. I've for years I've had a real problem just using that word, saying that word, because of the associations that it's got and how it's been appropriated or used or maybe co-opted by kind of the new age or whatever. And I wasn't someone who grew up with religion, only through school, maybe a bit, but essentially belonging and kind of dissolving those kind of that sense of separateness, I think it has to do with spirituality. I think it has to do with, again, like knowing that actually your discrete body isn't so discrete as it seems, given that we are constantly dealing with viruses and infections and each other's different kind of biological uses or whatever, you know, dealing with the same bacteria in the toilet that we go to. You know, we're having constant interactions with the world around us, and that so actually we're not separate. And you know, and as you may know, you know that the etymology of religion or religious is to kind of bind together, to draw together, and where we haven't got the same dominant cultures of religion as we did in the past, I think it's our job as artists and makers and as just people in the community to find ways to be coming together, not necessarily in an awkward come by our way, but like to actually ask each other stories. What's meaningful for you? How do we create meaning? How do we keep gunning for meaning? Because of course, if you don't have meaning, then you might, you know, it's basically you're on a path to ending it. You have to seek meaning, you know, wherever possible, and that I think is through these relationships of belonging and binding together. Yeah.
Okay. We have time for one more, I think. So. Okay. Okay.
Thank you so much. That's really super fascinating and amazing to hear about your project, and has so many levels to it. I don't have a question. I just was thinking about, I was wondering if you've heard about the artist group Invisible Flock, and together with Sheila Galani, they got a Wellcome Trust Hub Award, and they are currently, it's a really big research project with academics, and they work currently on a project with lots of indigenous communities across the world, and it's I can't find the word at the moment, but they've created a word. They really focus on the feeling of or our relationship with place, which is often even more so experienced in indigenous communities, and the feeling of loss when communities become displaced and have to leave, often in also to do with the environment and environmental change. And I thought that might be an interesting link to
Definitely.
Connect with.
Yeah. Do they support people to make films? Do they give people...
I think they work with various artists also,
Right.
but I don't know if they give people cameras. Yeah.
Okay. Invisible.
Invisible Flock.
Brilliant. Amazing. Yeah, thank you. Cool. Thanks.
The Wellcome Trust has a long history of commissioning work in terms of film, and some of it is based on where it started, which is that they were one of the first organisations that had a genuinely open-eyed way of talking to people about their bodies.
Right. Yeah.
Which has become extraordinary over time.
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere without people talking about their bodies. But one way, but one way or oh, okay. Yes. So they have a very, very good track record, and they have some fantastic film of mainly it's medical matters, but not just that. They have a big interest in everything to do with individuals and medicine.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if people
Good steer. That's great.
if people haven't
Suggestion.
delved in there, I could genuinely recommend it.
Yes.
And they don't pay me.
Brilliant. Thank you. Brilliant.
Okay, I'm going to call a close there because we're coming up right on time. Jen, thank you very much indeed.
Thank
Not
you.
only for a brilliant talk, but for really thoughtful and generous answers as well. So no, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, and my final outro bit. Thanks very much for joining us today. These talks run most Fridays during the year. Next week's talk will be by creative co-producers Neville Gabby and Philippa Bailey. They'll be sharing their project Living Language Land, a journey through endangered and minority languages that reveals different ways of relating to land and nature. So in a way, the perfect bookend to what we talked about today. If anybody here in the studio wants to stick around Hot Desk today or find out more about what we do, please find a member of the studio team. They're few and far between today, but we can jade around. I'm happy to field questions, so is Martin at the back. They'll be happy to help. If you're watching us online, drop us a line on studio@watershed.co.uk with any questions. Thank you for being here today. We'll see you all same time, same place next week. Thank you.